Hello, this is Tyler White. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to make a field expedient atlatl and dart. First off, what is that? Well, this is an atlatl. It's a basket weaver's atlatl with a stone added to it. And essentially what you do is you use it to throw a spear or a dart. This is a dart. Okay, you just hook it right there on the back of it, grab it, pick your target, and give it a throw. Okay, this is a nice quality, takes a lot of time to manufacture type of atlatl and dart setup. But what I'm going to show you is something that you can do probably within an hour or so if you have the right material, and reasonably knock down rabbits, possum, whatever it is for hunting. So it's field expedient. It's something you can do in the field to take out small game to eat, or even put a frog gig on the tip of it and hunt and fish with it where that's legal. All right, so let's teach you how to do this. Nice. When it comes to talking about the components that you need for this, it's really hard. I can't say always get this because you may live in a place where this doesn't exist. For example, I can't say always get river cane. If you live in the West, there isn't any really. I can't say always get bamboo, even though that's prolific and that's a great thing to use. There just isn't a lot. So this is river cane. Making the dart out of river cane and bamboo is one of the best things I've ever seen. We just don't have it growing around here. If you have it, that's what you should go to. As it grows, it's gonna grow like this. Fat part in the bottom, skinny part on the top. And the reason why you wanna throw it that way is because if you think about something heavy on this end and something light that's grabbing air on the back end, it's kind of like a rock with a string and it flies like that. If you throw the heavy end to the back and the light end to the front, it'll automatically tumble. Even if you put feathers, it'll just tumble all over the place. So understand that you're cutting it like this. Heavy end on the bottom or thick end at the bottom, skinny end on top. Now around here, we have willow. Willow is probably the best thing that you can use for an atlatl dart. There's other options, but I think for the most part, at least within the United States, if you can find straight willow, river cane, or bamboo, you're good with regards to making the dart. The next part is the feathers up here on top. If you've ever been hiking and you paid any kind of attention, you find feathers laying around on the ground. They are probably the hardest part to find or to source from a primitive perspective out in the wild. Bring them with you if you want to practice, if you can, if you're a member, put them in your primitive kit. If not, you don't have to have feathers. You can tie frayed rope, you can tie chunks of cloth, just something that will grab the air and hold that back of that atlatl stable and make it fly straight. That's all you really need in the back of this. Now I'm going to use feathers because that's kind of the no-brainer thing to do. And I have some turkey feathers. But if you don't have feathers, tie some cloth, make some super frayed rope and tie it around like a flu arrow. Just do something back there that gives it a little bit of wind drag so that when it starts to pitch, that wind drag brings it back down. Starts to pitch, the wind drag brings it back down. The idea is to make this thing fly in a straight line. Okay, this atlatl is made out of Osage. Osage is probably one of the best tool-making woods that I know of. Osage and yew, not a lot of it where we have it here. So again, what I'm going to make the whole atlatl kit out of is probably willow, unless I can find a properly shaped handle for the willow. Now, when we're making this handle, if you notice, it's got some curve to it. Okay? That curve is important because this notch that I'm making back here has to have the curve in the atlatl to grab the dart. It's just enough curve. Once my fingers are added to it, it's kind of straight like that, right? So as I put my fingers in here and I hold on to the dart, kind of looks like that when you throw it. And as you throw it, it releases and throws with mechanical advantage that dart. So when you're making this, in a field expedient manner, you're basically looking for a straight stick that's got a slight curve back here, and then you're gonna put a notch in the back of that stick. Don't get a fat stick, okay? You look like someone who doesn't know what they're doing if you get a fat stick. So you got this big heavy thing that you're trying to lump stuff out with. It doesn't work as well. Get something thin, you know, something like inch, 2 inches max maybe, and it's straight-ish and then has a little bit of a curve, and you're gonna put your notch back there. All right, so let's start building on this. The first thing that I'm gonna do is go look in the willow for straight willow and for curved chunk for my dart and atlatl. Now, I've already gathered some willow, because what you're gonna wanna do with the willow is this. Get as straight as you can, but nature doesn't make anything really that straight. Strip it of all of its outer bark and cambium layer, let it dry in the sun, or preferably dry it over a fire. You basically just spin it like you're cooking a marshmallow, you know, tanning it, not burning it. And as you spin that willow, you'll be able to just kind of pry on it a little bit and twist it and look and pry and twist until you've got a straight chunk of willow. So that takes about a day. You gather your willow, you strip it of bark, you fire harden it, let it sit for the remainder of the day at least. That's the ideal situation. I've already done that with the chunk of willow. That doesn't mean that you can't hunt with the willow you have the day of. The problem is it's not as tight, it's gonna have more weight, so it's gonna be a little more sluggish. It won't be as springy, and without that springiness, it's not gonna fling off of your atlatl dart, or I'm sorry, off of your atlatl. So ideally, collect the willow, strip the bark and the cambium layer, fire harden it while straightening it, and let it sit until the next day. Sometimes I'll just tie a string and let it hang. If I've got a flat surface, that's great. If I've got 2 or 3 of them, I can strap them all together and they will kind of keep each other straight. So that's how you harden it. All right, let's go gather some willow for the atlatl and for the dart. Okay, right here I have a stand of willow, okay? As you can see, there's tons of various thicknesses and sizes and everything that are happening in here. But what I can do is I can come in here and I can say, well, this one right here is about the thickness that I want of my dart, but I've got a pretty solid curl in there, so that's not ideal. This one has a natural hook in it already. You might even be able to use this as your atlatl, or even the base piece right here as your atlatl, because it's got a little bit of curve into it, and I think that's actually the one I'm gonna take for my atlatl. Finding the dart's the hard one. Usually singular branches that are kind of growing out by themselves, roughly, at least 6 foot tall if you can, they get real straight. I'll spend a lot of time walking through chunks or bushes of willow, trying to find an ideal atlatl dart. Okay, now I'm gonna grab this chunk right here, and this will be for our atlatl. And when I do this, you wanna bend it over and cut really low, and either slide along the bend or cut in a circle the fibers on the outside, so that all you do is crunch through the dry part in the middle. The reason why I want to cut low is I don't want to leave a mark that I've been here, okay? I want to, when I gather in a way that's good for the plant and doesn't show that I've been here. So I'm going to untwist these. This is the one I want. So I maybe can get 2 atlatls out of this. As I start to push this down, I'm gonna make a bit of a curl down here. I'm just gonna slide the blade right along the top of that curl. As you can see, the pressure that I've given it just causes it to split right off, and I have put minimal effort in getting that taken off, okay? The other thing is, it's a low cut. This tree will absolutely thrive from that low cut. And it'll kind of clear out this area, and a new sprout will come right in behind it and fill it right in, so it won't really hurt or mess with the tree. Okay, let's talk about carving the atlatl itself. All right, so I've got, it's a little thicker than I want, but I've got a curve and a termination right here. So I could probably make 1 atlatl out of this, and I can thin this down. This isn't too thick. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is grab a reverse grip here, and I'm gonna pull on it in a circle. Okay, this is called a rose cut. And as I muscle my way around that, Just gonna cut those fibers deeper. Now I should be able to just break this piece just like that, minimal effort. That can make me one atlatl. Right here, I can either use this curl right here and put an X right here, or I could do something really funky and put a notch in the back of this. That actually seems more complicated, and because you're never gonna find anything like this in the wild, I think the ideal piece is gonna be right here with the notch right there. So I'm gonna cut right above there. Because it's got a little bit of a top heaviness, I'm gonna push cut instead of reverse cut here. Now again, since I cut the fibers on the outside and all I have left is that crunchy part in the middle, breaks just smooth, okay? Now this piece I'm gonna go put back in the tree so it can die naturally and not leave a mess. Now these are essentially two ideal chunks. I can even go so far as to turning this one into a bow drill right there. In fact, I think that's what this big fatter one's going to become, as a bow for a bow drill. This little piece is going to become my atlatl thrower. Okay, I've got a hook that'll be right here. Hold on to the dart like that, and that's how I'm going to launch it. Notice how it has just a slight curl right there. And I'll put an X cut right here, and that will hold my dart as I throw it. Now it's a little thicker. I would call this as thick as a fat pocket knife, like a Swiss Army tool, maybe for reference. But I'm gonna take the skin off of it, I'm gonna trim it down a little bit, and it'll make it thin and, you know, be able to fling a little bit easier. All right, so let's go start working on that. So I've gathered my pieces. This is for the atlatl. This is the part that I did earlier for the dart, okay? Now, it's not super complicated with regards to the dart. I had a chunk growing like this. I stripped the bark and the cambium off, cut it off, and scraped it with the back of my knife to make it slick. I then fire hardened it. You can see slight marks in here, a couple places. And I had a bit of a bend right here that was hard to deal with, so I kind of pressed on that one, a couple marks here. But for the most part, I got this straight-ish. There's still a little bit of a bend, okay? You can see still a little bit of a bend, and that's not ideal, but again, I can fire harden it right here by put a little more flame on it. And I'll just kind of pry it back. You'll feel the fibers kind of slosh when it's warm, and you'll eventually get that straight. Right now it's straight enough to show you, but because it takes so long, I did this yesterday. Cut it, skin the bark, fire harden it, let it sit, and you've got your blank, and this is just a chunk of willow, just like this. But now, what I need to do is skin this and trim it down. We'll put our notches in, and we'll have the atlatl itself. So, let's get to work. Okay, it's skinned. Now we just got to notch this and prepare it for the dart. Okay, I've got this cut. I've got a couple feathers, and I'm using something called synthetic sinew. Essentially, it's a nylon type of rope, or just nylon that people use for leather tools. You can use yucca, or you can use dogbane cordage. If you make it really thin, it takes a long time to do this. You can use the guts of 550 cords, shoelaces, whatever. but something thin and small is best. If you have the forethought, buy synthetic sinew from a leather store and put it in your possibles pouch and you'll have this. Now, traditionally they use sinew. Sinew is essentially tendons from animals, and you gotta have an animal first. So if you're in a survival situation, you're gonna have to be a little bit thrifty and intelligent about coming up with some string, or be smart enough to have it in advance so that you can make stuff like this. Okay, if you have questions about the cordage video, I made a cordage video about how to make dog bane cordage, and I'm going to make a video in the videos in the future about how to make cordage out of other types of material. Okay, now the wing, the feather should come from the same side of the wing, right? So 2 feathers from the same side, because if it doesn't, essentially you'll have them turning when you put the top and the bottom on, it'll make your dart turn, okay? But when you put them opposites, like this, they drag equally, and they don't create a tail spin. So if you put a feather from the right side and a feather from the left side and you throw your dart, it's gonna turn in the air, and that's bad. So what you want is 2 feathers from the same side of the wing, both right, both left, both tail, whatever, in order to do this properly. Now, there's a complicated version where you split the feather, find some sort of primitive glue, or make some sort of primitive glue, and then strap it at the top and the bottom, and then burn the tip of this off. I'm not gonna get that complicated in this video because this is a field expedient video. But I want you to know that that's how this is done. What we are gonna do, however, with our dart, first I'm gonna trim that down because it's kinda got a crooked chunk there. I don't know if you can see that crooked finger right there. So if I take that off, it'll just help straighten out the overall shape of my dart. Here, that's nice and crunchy because it's been heat treated, makes it springy. Okay, and then this part's gonna eventually be flat, so for now, I'm just gonna carve that off. Okay, and those are the parts needed for the dart and the atlatl. Before I get too carried away though, let's knock out the atlatl and then we'll build the dart. So with this atlatl, I can make it thinner, right? It's kind of got a natural curl here, and I want to decide what part I want it to be. The fatter part is right here, the skinnier part is right there, so I think I'm going to put my notch back here and make this the handle. Because this is going to be the handle, I don't want that nubby right there. I've removed the nubby, okay? And also looking down the center, I can see it swings a little to my left, your right, my right, your left, the center. So right here is where I want my notch, okay? Now, the way that I'm gonna do this notch is an X cut. For that, I just need a bonking stick. I'm gonna use the other chunk of willow I gathered. What you're gonna do, and you can do this with just about any knife, just don't go over hitting it, is you're gonna put your knife like that and like this, okay? I'm trying to put it up here so you can kind of see it on video. Make sure I'm putting it in the right spot. Create my X. Then all I'm gonna do here, bunk that a little bit, create my other X, about the same angle depending on how sharp I want my point to be. Kind of rotating on me a little bit. Okay, and that gives me my initial cut. Now all I have to do, since this is going to give me that pointy nub that I need, is cut up into it and then stop when I get close. Okay, and I'm going to remove 3 sides of this X and leave the 4th side alone. As you can see, that gives me the little notch that I'm looking for right there in order to grip my atlatl dart. So slide this lid along. Now with this, you kind of want to remove a lot of material right here in front, because that's where that dart's going, is right there. So you kind of got to remove almost 2 or 3 inches in front of it. And I like to pry on my thumb like this, because it's I'm all about safety in the backcountry. You don't want to cut your finger. Normally, you really don't want to cut it in the backcountry. And again, I use this chest lever technique for strength and control. It allows me to slide my blade right up close. All I'm doing is pull my shoulder blades apart while I do this so that I don't overcut or fling and cut myself. And right here I'm putting my thumbs together so that I don't cut back towards my hand. And I'm just curling like this. And that way I can't, my hand will close before I can reach the other hand and cut it, okay? So it's all about slow pushing control and having an incredibly sharp knife. Now we're just slowly removing piece by piece here and creating that little notch. I'm going to try to level it out a little bit more and clean it up a bit because I want it to be nice and smooth. And I'm trying to cut the direction of the growth still, which makes it just a little easier to deal with the grain of the wood. Okay, I've got this mostly removed. Now what I need to do is create just a little bit of an overhang, like a little cliff, okay? So essentially I want to cut right into there and curl it back. And that creates that little bit of a hook, if you will, to grip the back of my dart. And without that, it's just going to keep falling off of your atlatl and be really annoying. There you have it. I did an X cut, removed all the material in the front, created a little bit of a notch right there, and that's what's going to hook and throw my atlatl dart. Okay, the last thing that you can do if you really want to get heavy at it is straighten out your dart, clean it up a bit, make it skinnier, cause it to lose a little bit of weight. Right now it's not too big, but I could lean this up on both sides, just shaving, thin amounts of wood off the side of them, making it nice and long and skinny. And I can also thin it from the top, so it's more like a square. And I'm trying to chase the grain on this. I'm not trying to create deeper cuts because I don't want this to split down the road. And again, it's already in a position where it can throw darts, but I like lean atlatls with less weight and flat spots on the front. And then this back, I'm going to pretty much leave it alone. And the reason I'm going to leave that back alone is that it can keep its springiness naturally. Okay, now that I'm that far, I've got a couple ridges on the side, and all I'm going to do is use the back of my knife to tame them like a scraper. And what that's going to do is it's going to not violate the rings, the growth rings. It's going to help it to stay rigid and not have a place where it would scrape or where it would split once it's under pressure. Okay, that is my atlatl. Now, ideally what I want to do right now is fire harden this. I'm not going to start a fire for this one specifically right this second, but either let it dry in the sun and go back and forth, because if you lay a green stick and the sun's hitting it like this side shrinks first, and pretty soon you have this curled up green stick. Okay, I'm done with the Atlatl. That's this guy right here. I've got my nice close notch. I've got a nice close notch. I X-cut it, cleaned the material out in the front, undercut it just a little bit. And then I put this into kind of a square shape, right? And use the back of my knife to remove the little ridges so that there's more structural stability to this thing, okay? Kind of see how it's square-ish and rounded. And I did not touch the back because I want that springiness in it. Now later on I will fire harden this after I get some time because I want this shape to remain the shape that it is. The dart, all right. When it comes to doing a dart, essentially what we're gonna do here is, remember, it grows like this, fat part down, skinny part up, so I wanna throw it fat part forward because that's where the weight is. Right now, this is just a blunt tipped Atlatl dart. If I hit a bird with this, if I hit a rabbit with this, it'll take them out. If I have the ability to get something like a frog gig or something pointy or whatever, I can add that. I can add a obsidian tip or whatever. Right now for this video though, I want to teach you how to make the field expedient dart and Atlatl, so we're not going to deal with the tip. I'll add that into another video. So dealing with the back here, the first thing I need to deal with is this. It's not going to notch itself into the little nipple piece that's on the end of the Atlatl. So what I like to do is to grind this into a rock, okay? Grind it flat. I'm just gonna twist it this way. It's not quite spinning the way I want it to. And this keeps the fibers from getting all messed up, okay? Once I've got that kind of flat, I'm gonna remove kind of a groove, right? So I will cut in a circle all of this wood. This is really hard wood. I should have made this way before I hardened it. But I want it to be perfectly flat with a hole in the middle. Okay, I got it nice and flat. Now I'm gonna groove that middle out. And a lot of times you can get it flat like this from grinding it on the rock. You can cut it however you wanna get to it. Just like cutting into the tip of a hearth board, I'm gonna grab my blade high so that I don't push into my hands, and I'm gonna spin it. And I'm spinning the stick on the blade, not the blade on the stick. That way the blade is not pushing, just the stick. And that way I don't cut myself. I'm just kind of twisting it around from the center to create a groove. Notice that the stick is moving. Again, this is just sitting here so that I'm not gonna push my bladed hand into my other hand. And there's my groove. The next thing I need to do is to take some of this synthetic sinew and back this so that it's not gonna blow apart. If there's constantly pressures on these fibers, these little fibers will start to blow out. So that means that I'm gonna reinforce these fibers similar to what has been done right there. Okay, and this is the just fibers around the outside back to keep that river cane and bamboo from blowing apart. Now to do this, I just tie a clove hitch, wrap it, tie a clove hitch. Burn the excessive end when it's done. Now to tie a clove hitch, I have the short end and the long end. I twist it around like that. So the right hand is underneath the left, and I put it over, and I do it again. Twist it so the right hand is underneath the left and put it over, and you will get this little cross design with your clove hitch. You only need to do about the last inch or so of this. And I'm gonna rotate it so that it uses up this little leg so I don't have a bunch of sinew left over. Pull it really tight on both sides. And another thing you can do is to tuck this. So this little string is gonna be left tucked inside of the part that I'm wrapping. And that's gonna hold it nice and snug and super tight. You want this as tight as possible. I'm gonna give it a couple layers, go almost to the top. and then wrap back down it. And if there's any issues, because I have about 1 millimeter of willow left, I can use my knife to trim it closer to the string and then reset if I need to. Couldn't have measured that more perfect if I tried. Okay, now to finish this off, I'm gonna do the clove hitch again, and I'll just do multiples of these and pull it tight. Twist it over itself, pull it tight. I even get a leathering tool and yank on it, and that should hold. Nice and snug. Now what I'll do is I'll just burn that tip that's left over, and I will purposefully leave myself a little chunk right there that I can burn off later. Now I need to add the feathers. I need a place to grip these feathers, so I don't want this big bald chunky part of the feather, and I want them to be about the same length. So what I'm going to do is put the tips of the feathers together. I'm going to remove the big part that I don't want. Okay, and then I'm going to scrape away about 1 inch of this duff material here. Cut it off. Get it out of the road so that I have something to hold on to. Right? Clean the other one up. Get my eyeballs on there to have a good measurement. Now I want to kind of do the same thing to the tip. I just need a little piece to grab a hold of. So this one's broken a little bit, so I'm going to go above the break. Use my other knife. A little bit sharper. I've been using my small one a lot this weekend. And now I have just enough of a little nub that I can grip it with my synthetic sinew when it comes time. Measure my two together. Give me a point of reference to notch this other one. And now I've got the feathers that I need. Now to attach these, I want to go 4 or 5 inches below where the where the back part is, and I want to flip these over on their back. Okay. So we're not, now you can see that they're both from the right wing. So the top one's going to my left, the bottom one's going to my right. And this is how I'm going to initiate these, just like that. So let's get some string. And again, I just like to start out with the clove hitch. Don't want to make a mess here. At about the length where I want my feather. And that clove hitch just basically gets the string started for me. Pull it nice and tight. Wrap that excess piece around there. And then I'll start my wrap. I've got a couple wraps in there. I'm going to add the back of one feather. Get it nice and snug. Flip it over, add the other feather. All right, so we did a clove hitch. We wrapped it a couple times. We've wrapped over the top of the first and the second feather so that they are on the opposite sides of each other facing away. So now I'm going to snug it nice and tight, almost so this feather kind of crunches and starts to curl up. And then I'm going to wrap it, and eventually we're just going to cut this extra piece off. But the key is I want to anchor this thing down solid right here where it is so that these feathers won't rotate on the atlatl as I continue to wrap it. That fly's getting me. Okay, now once we've got that down fairly solid in the front, I'll just start to rotate up and in between the feathers, and I'll start skipping more space as I do so. Just want to anchor these down solid. Now when I start to get to the actual feathers, I'm going to separate these, separate and pull down, and try to separate between the feathers as I wrap. The reason why I'm going to do this is because I don't want any of these feathers to lay down flat, but I do need to hold on to the feather itself without rotating it. You gotta get them to split and pop back up before you hold them down, or they'll get pinned underneath. We don't want that. So now I'm running into the very end of my feather, and because I left that little pointy piece, that little rigid center vein, I've got something that I can tighten up on now. And that part can be wrapped around multiple times to hold the feather to the dart. Just have to deal with the feather itself, get it nice and snug. This is the last finishing touches, and I want it to be tight because I do not want this feather to come off. It's going to go through some abuse, it's going to fly through trees, it's going to fly through sagebrush, and it needs to stay where I put it. Okay, we are done. Now to get this last part and keep it nice and tight, I'm going to do another clove hitch. Flip it over, pull it snug. And I like to do 2 or 3 of these things, so it's kind of stacking up on top of itself. And then the last little bit of string is hanging out right there. And that's it, okay? Last thing I'm gonna do is hit this with the lighter. I'm gonna trim these little pieces up and we'll be totally done. All right, my very small finishing touches that I have are lick my finger here, burn this tip. Because my synthetic sinew is made out of nylon, it's gonna melt, and when it melts, it kind of seals it and keeps it shut. I like that. So I'll lick my finger and I'll smash it shut like that, and it will create a big blob of sealed synthetic sinew that's not gonna come undone. That, right at the terminus of my clove hitch, will keep this from coming loose when it's flying and being thumped on and having tons of stressors put on it. All right, guys and girls, this was a field expedient atlatl creation from scratch. I made the atlatl, made the dart. It's 100% out of willow, 2 turkey feathers from the same wing, and some synthetic sinew. So here is the christening of the dart, the first throw. I've got it like this, okay? Pick it like that and flies right into a tree. That's outstanding. Nice. All right, I'm gonna clean up my mess. I hope that was valuable to you. This is how you could make a primitive hunting weapon in under an hour with very, very simple access to simple things. A little bit of string, a couple feathers, or some fluffy something. You can even put a spruce bough on the backside, just something that'll drag through the air. Will give you a device that you can thump a rabbit with at 25 meters if you've got some practice. Hopefully this was valuable to you. If it was, please hit the subscribe button. Check out the other videos we have on this channel. There's other instructors with a deep well of knowledge. And thank you for watching.